Toby Hawley, how are you?
It's me. I'm well. Thank you.
You're excellent.
You got it.
It's such a pleasure to have you in here.
Oh, likewise.
Thank you
Pleasure
for
to
being
be
here.
Very excited about it.
We've talked about this a lot, actually. We've been trying to plan this for several months.
Yeah.
A long time.
Yeah.
A little bit before I was recording, we were talking about our relationship and how we've been following each other on social media for literally years.
Yeah.
For
2015.
years. Yeah, you just mentioned that the first post that you liked of ours was in 2015.
Yeah, that was my suspicion. And so, yeah, this morning I dug all the way back into the depths of your Instagram and it's like, yeah, first like 2015.
It's so crazy.
I know.
It's been honestly really cool to watch people like you grow.
Yeah.
And do your thing and ride your wave and catch your stride and everything.
Yeah.
It's cool. Boise is a legit place. And when you can see people, doing real estate like you do, or even just the creative content that you post, I don't use the word inspiring very often, but it's really cool to watch people truly level up in their game.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I kind of feel like we're peers a little bit because I remember seeing your account all those years ago and you were obviously like using it with intention and trying to grow this thing. And so it was like you were one of the first accounts that I followed that was kind of doing similar-ish stuff to what I was doing. So it's been, fun to watch you grow and evolve, like starting out with your long, long hair. I remember the first time I saw you in person, it was at Whole Foods, and I knew it was you, but I was such a weirdo. I didn't want to say hi, especially at that time. I feel like now it's less weird to just walk up to someone and be like, I know you from the internet. Like that happens to me a lot more now. And I don't know. But at the time I was like, oh, that's Sarah. He's right there. You had your necklaces on. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so funny, actually. I was just hanging out with Hank Bachmeier, the quarterback for Boise State, and everybody knows who he is. Like, he can walk around town and we walk past people and people are like, that's Hank. That's Hank.
Yeah.
And it's so weird to be with a person because, like, you may get this on occasion. People recognize you.
Yeah.
And it's weird to, like, have that happen, but then to be with a person where it's, like, really happening to, it's kind of cool to watch, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, that does happen to me every now and then when I'm out having coffee or if I'm downtown or whatever it is, like, oh, Toby in Boise. And it's nice. It's a little embarrassing sometimes if I'm with other people. I don't know why it shouldn't be per se, but I always encourage, if you follow me or know who I am, like, please do come say hi. Like, cause I would love to, like, I just met a guy the other day that was like, oh, I'm sorry to bother you. I was like, no, always say hi. Yeah.
That's cool. It's meaningful. And
yeah, it's nice.
We were just briefly talking about just the community in Boise and how cool it is to know people like you or Brock or David or Trentimus and really get to meet people through this podcast.
Yeah, totally.
It's amazing.
It is.
Or through the relationships that we just build in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very cool.
It is. I love Boise so much. I mean, I'm biased and I've sold Boise for a living for the last 5 years. It makes my job very easy though. Like it's not a hard sell to live in Boise and have your family here and start a business here or whatever it is. Like, but it is, I mean, obviously I've only ever lived and worked really here, so I don't have context, but it does seem to be like such an incredibly supportive place if you're trying to grow or, have an event that you're trying to promote or whatever it is. Like, yeah.
By the way, your event is next week.
Next week, yes, on the 18th.
And what is this covering?
So this is a panel discussion with myself and 2 other influencers in the area. And we're going to be talking really specifically about Instagram and pretty specifically for real estate agents. That's who's putting on the event. It's a brokerage hosted thing, but yeah, it's going to be pretty big. And we are selling live stream tickets that way. If, cause like I mentioned earlier, like I was disappointed that we weren't able to kind of market it to our own followers.
Yeah, 'cause it's sold out.
It's sold out. Yeah. It's sold out internally.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Which is great and unexpected, but I've done a little bit of speaking in the past year and those experiences were, the only indicator I had, but I was like, I think we're going to need more space. Like I'm always impressed with the turnout of those types of events. So
That's such a good experience to gain, just hosting something and
Yeah.
learning what that process is like.
Yeah. Have you done any public speaking? Have you done?
Mm-hmm.
You have. Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah, it's I've hosted multiple workshops. I just spoke at the Float conference in Denver,
Oh, awesome.
which was in front of like 400 people or something.
Wow.
It's the world's largest international float conference. So it was super freaking beautiful of an experience.
Yeah.
I've talked with different nonprofit organizations at their events here in Boise too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's cool. It shows you a lot about yourself when you're up there
Yeah.
and your preparation and everything.
Yeah. I was so nervous the first time I got up on stage with the microphone in my hand and cameras in my face. Like I was so terrified. But after I did the first one, then I was like, all right, I got this now. Like I'm fine. I'm a natural.
That's funny.
Yeah. I'm not, but
So we had coffee a few months ago.
I did.
And one of the things that stuck out the most during our discussion was you mentioned like the concerns that people should have when looking for a home and working with a realtor.
Yeah.
And that's literally stayed with me since we talked about it. It was such good insight,
Yeah.
such good perspective. And we don't got to base this whole episode around that. But would you want to share a little bit about working with a realtor and
Yeah,
that
of course.
process?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I think, I've been selling real estate for 5 years, full time. So I've got a good knowledge base on that type of thing. And one of my biggest things is just teaching people how to ask their agent questions, what questions to ask. I just have found that a lot of people just don't even know. Like most people find an agent through referral, whether it's a parent or, a friend which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. I just encourage people to ask some questions because in the state of Idaho, the bar for entry to become a real estate agent is fairly low. There's not a lot of education involved. The test scores do not need to be stellar. And it's pretty inexpensive. So that just sort of allows for a lot of riffraff. Like I wish that it was more difficult to become an agent. We have more licensees in the state of Idaho than the state of California. Yeah, right.
That's insane.
Yeah, I know.
Considering the major population difference.
Right. Like to think about that and let that sink in. Yeah, but that's a big part of the reason why I think is because it's inexpensive and it's pretty easy. And a licensee does not necessarily mean a full-time person that's actually buying and selling, right? Like most people have their license to do their own deals and maybe for their friends and family every now and then. But they're not really, the 80-20 rule definitely applies in that way too. Like, it's a much smaller group of agents in the Valley that are doing the majority of the transactions. But yeah, so what we were talking about is just, asking those questions. Like I mostly just want, if you are hiring an agent to be your buyer, first of all, you don't pay that agent. So if you are looking to buy a home, get an agent, get one that knows what they're doing because it costs you $0 and they're legally required to advocate for your behalf. And sometimes what I see if you go like directly to the listing agent, what people don't understand always, that listing agent is legally obligated to represent the best interest of the seller. They have a contract. If there is a house listed in the open market on the MLS, the multiple listing service, that's where Zillow and Realtor.com and Trulia, they pull their listings from the MLS. But yeah, so if you're seeing a house that's for sale, it's because there's a representation agreement between that agent and that seller. So, they're not looking out for your best interest per se, but that seller is paying for your buyer's agent's commission, if that makes sense. So the buyer is not paying it, the seller is. So it's free to you. And I've just seen a lot of situations that could have been avoided had the buyer had adequate representation for their behalf and their best interest. But really the only thing I want people to know is just asking simple questions like how many transactions did you do last year? What areas do you like to work in? Are you knowledgeable about? And just kind of assessing that and maybe take a look at some of their previous, like look at their resume. If you ask for a resume and your agent doesn't have one, that's a red flag a little bit, in my opinion. Like not every agent has one, but I just think it's good to kind of, I want you to work with someone who's actively buying and selling because that's when you're going to get someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, that's amazing advice and insight. And you also mentioned something like the number of contracts they get declined or something.
Oh yeah. Yes. Oh, I remember that. Yeah. So Boise is still, and it has been for the past 5 years, ever since I've gotten started. And it's still this way. It's absolutely a seller's market. We have on average, maybe like 1.5 months of inventory on the market, and a healthy balanced market has about 6 months of inventory on the market. So that means there's a lot more people trying to buy homes than there are willing to sell. So what that means for home buyers, we're in a multiple offer market, right? Especially if you're looking for something under 350,000 in the city of Boise, it's very likely that you will encounter multiple offers. And so if you're in that zone, I would love to have you ask your agent that question of how many offers do you typically write? Like, what's your average offers written versus offers accepted? Is if that number's high, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because, multiple offers, like, we're going to get offers rejected. But if you're an agent and you're writing 7 or 10 offers and every single one of them is getting rejected, we have a problem. What that problem is, I'm not necessarily sure. It could be, maybe there needs to be a little more client education. But I mean, as an agent, obviously my goal, every offer that I write, I want to get accepted. So if that means educating my client or whatever it is, but I see that as both as a buyer's agent and as a listing agent, that, if you're writing a lot of offers and they get frustrated because I'm rejecting their offer, if I'm the listing agent, I'm like, well, you got to figure out how to get yours out ahead.
That's so fascinating to me, because I really don't know much about real estate.
Yeah.
But to hear that kind of insight on when I do buy a home or when I know somebody who is in that process, it's nice to be able to offer just a little bit of perspective on that.
Yeah. And even just a simple question of like, how do you handle multiple offer situations? What's your experience with multiple offer situations? Like, just so that you can kind of assess, like, if your agent looks at you and goes, what? Like, that, I want you to know that before you sign an agreement with that agent. And it's just kind of an unfortunate fact that a lot of agents will just sort of slide a representation agreement across the table without fully explaining what it is that you're signing. So as a buyer, really do your due diligence and make sure that anything that you're signing, what you're signing. And if you don't understand what's in it or what you're looking at, ask.
Yeah, you mentioned something along the lines of people can put in that contract like a major fine or fee to stop working with them.
Yep, exactly.
Or something
you're correct. Yeah.
So, I remember this. Like,
yeah,
this is
I know
good stuff.
you do. That's good. That makes me happy. Like, I don't want to. It makes me sad when I see, clients out there, like people they're trying to buy a home to live in. They have kids, whatever it is, like. And they're constantly getting their offer rejected, or they're on the hook for something that they didn't understand. Like, it should be all of our job as agents to educate consumers, but it just doesn't always happen that way, unfortunately. So it's really, I want to empower anybody trying to buy, like, have the knowledge so that you don't get entrapped in that. But yeah, so what happens in that situation, like I said, agents will slide something across the table without fully explaining what is in that document. And so in a buyer's representation agreement, there is language in that document that says, if you don't end up buying a house with me, if you write an offer, like say you cut me out and you go directly to the agent and you go pending, you get under contract and you close, that buyer is on the hook for 3% of the commission. So that's, the buyer is on the hook for 3% typically. Mm-hmm. And that can change a little bit depending on what's in the specific contract. But that's a situation that I have seen, unfortunately, where an agent will come out of the woodworks when we're already on contract in something else and say, hey, you signed this agreement and I want 3% of this deal. And that's a huge number, like 3% of like what, 350. It's a lot of money. And so it can be really upsetting, particularly for a buyer that didn't understand what they were signing. And I see that all the time. So dang. Know what you're signing, even if it's a lease. Like,
no joke.
I've worked with lease to buy options where I came in to the transaction a little late on the scene and, had to comb through. And so know what you're signing. It will save you a lot of time and money.
Thank you for that insight. Input.
Of course. Yeah.
So you've been doing real estate for about 5 years now. Yeah. You've been pretty big into the social media aspect of self-promotion or promotion of your business and your movement. And working with the right people and you're even doing an event that's dedicated around that now.
Yeah.
What have been some of the biggest lessons you've learned doing that and getting better at it?
Yeah. I mean, I've always like heavy in the lessons, but I feel like in the last 2 years, like they really just came in like fast and furious, like hard learning. But so when I got started in real estate 5 years ago, you know, the thing that they teach you, like let everyone know that you do real estate. So I was in this position of, I didn't have any money. I didn't have an advertising budget. I didn't have a marketing budget. I maxed out my credit card to get my real estate license, like, which is a pretty like typical story for most agents. So, you know, and that was in 2015. And at that time, the word influencer wasn't even a word. Like it wasn't necessarily a thing that we have as much language around it as we do now. But I kind of dabbled in other social platforms on getting my name out there. And, you know, so I was like, how do I reach the maximum amount of people with no money? And I found out pretty quickly that my return of my time, like as a business owner, there's two ways, right? There's check equity or there's sweat equity, right? We're either putting in our time or we're writing a check. And so putting in my time, but I learned really quickly that Instagram was I had a lot of return, like pretty quickly after putting out consistent content, I would get business from it. And so then once I had that little bit of a success, I was like all in, like all my time and energy and marketing efforts are all going to go to this space. And I also did and still do a lot of in-person events. I think those can be really powerful as well. But yeah, so that I just spent my time and energy building that. And then it kind of became this thing that I never would have ever even imagined. Like the trajectory of my personal, professional life has completely changed as a direct result of creating sort of a platform, if you will.
Yeah, content creation, a vibe, a message, a way of being.
Yeah.
We do our best with social media because it's a filtered aspect of our life. And
yeah,
we mostly only put things that look good or that represent a message.
But do you feel like that's changing now?
For sure it's changing because we know it.
Right. I do. Like I don't know if you watched the Taylor Swift documentary. I'm going to go ahead and guess that you didn't.
You're right. I did not.
Yeah, I figured. But
It's on my list.
It should be on your list. We'll see. It really should because...
Let's talk about it first.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of just all about... I resonate with her documentary a lot, actually, because she kind of just talks about having this rise and then this fall of like, you know, building this image and being the good girl and the maiden archetype of like, don't step out of line, like, don't upset anyone, like, you know, be the good girl. And I totally relate with that. Like, yeah, we learn pretty quickly, like, okay, like, you know, stay in line, don't offend anybody, like, don't say anything too much. And so then you spend all this time kind of creating this archetype, if you will, and then there's backlash from it. Like, so for her, yeah, this fall from grace, like her shadow came out and then we all project our shadow, you know, like the perfect person doing something wrong. And anyway, it's quite good. I think I'm obviously a fan of Taylor Swift, but
I mean, possibly, but also that's an amazing perspective because she's lived a very unique life,
right?
A very unique life. And you're right. She was that good girl that like, I mean, imagery of
yes, and being accused of micromanagement of her image because she's, you know, like sourcing all of this validation from this source. And I totally get that. I understand that, like, you get this social validation and so you put forth this, you know, more curated image.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Because we do what works.
Right.
For the most part.
Right. But in recent times, I think like I said, I think there's totally a departure from that. And I don't think that's people are seeing, you know, consumers are so savvy. Like,
oh, for sure.
Yeah. Nobody
people know. People aren't dumb.
Right.
And I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Like, people know when you're being genuine and honest and real, or if you aren't, whether they think they know, like they deep down know what's going on.
Right.
And it's also kind of weird to think about people breaking free from curating a perfect image or post
Yeah.
and doing one that they don't have makeup on or something, but also that can be done in a very fake way. So
Yeah.
there's that tail end of the same concept as well. So where is it really coming from?
Right.
Is it coming from a place of being genuine and open and vulnerable in a real way? Because people know the difference.
Yeah.
And there might be people who don't know and they'll still follow and do their thing. But
Right.
ultimately, like what vibration, what ripple is being produced through this, and that will build your audience. That will build a community.
Yeah.
And I've really seen that with our platform.
Yeah.
And seeing certain posts attract certain people, but the overall vibe of it all, like
Yeah.
you said, we do our best to be intentional and meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's just moving away from that a little bit. And I've tried to kind of move more into vulnerability with intention. And I've been consulting a lot for the past year with people that want to grow their Instagram, that want to grow their platform for business reasons. They just, they want to grow. And so they're hiring me to kind of teach them how to do it, right? How to find that balance of relatable and individual type of content. But it's just interesting. Like a question that I get more often than I would have thought that I don't really love, if I'm honest, is this fear of like, if I put myself out there and I grow, I'm opening myself up to criticism or negative comments. And that's real. I don't like, that is a possibility. And that's just sort of an interesting thing that people are nervous about. Like with growth comes opening yourself up.
For sure. And we've dealt with this. I'll segue into that in a second, but a lot of that is what value you put on comments and what value you put on someone else's point of view and perspective.
Right.
And this to me, so deep down, comes from where are you actually coming from? If you know where you're coming from and you know you're being genuine and you know you're being who you actually are with your mission, with your path, with your being and way of life,
right,
then other people don't matter in what they say or don't say.
Yeah.
This is a very interesting concept in terms of, are we mentally trying to formulate ourselves into something, or are we being a certain way? And that can dissolve all of the internal conflict and responses that we have from improper feedback.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Also, like, I've talked with Aubrey Marcus about this a little bit in terms of, if you place a super high importance on people who give you compliments or say more pleasurable things, praise, then you're going to place that equal level of energetic importance on the negative things too.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, you can't have one without the other.
Totally. It was, yeah. And it was been a real wake up call for me. Like, cause only in the past like year or two have I started to receive negative comments, like that were anything of like substance. Like maybe before I would get like spam or like a bot or whatever. Like, so you're like, this isn't a real human. This doesn't, like this doesn't affect me at all. Like, and
peep this photo.
Yeah. Right. Recently I did a post. I was at the Women's March. And so I had some Women's March related hashtags and I got all these negative comments, but they were all bots. None of them were real.
Weird.
I know. I was like, who is spending the time to like create bot accounts to send them out like related to these hashtags to write negative comments? But even that, what I'm talking about, negative comments like from people that I know well, or people that I don't know but are real people in my community. Like, and when I started to get some negative comments about like I've been called fake, I've been called artificial, like everything she's doing on there is so fake, like I've been blocked by some of my own peers, like that was like such a wake up call for me. Like, cause it was that light of like, okay, exactly what you said, like getting all this, these endorphin hits of like likes and good comments, like all this praise. And then when it's not so good, it's this moment of like, oh crap. Like, is that real? Is that real what they're saying? Like, yeah.
Yeah. This is such a good discussion and topic.
Yeah.
Cause for me, all of those moments have helped me dial deeper into the real meaning of why I'm doing it.
Right.
And we talk about that with the David McKenzie episode. It's continual refinement of intention Are you doing it for comments, or are you doing it because this is something that you're actually doing with your life? And there's a big difference there.
Totally.
A big difference. And we learn that through the process.
Yeah.
You know, that's just the only way to actually embed that lesson into your DNA. And it's how you handle those moments. And do you let it throw your emotions for a whirl, or do you just be like, hey, this person, you know, they feel the way they do. They have their point of view coming from their own background and own frame of reference and own potentially like traumatic moments in their life that dictate who they are and how they respond to things. Like there's so much inside of every single person.
Yeah.
And meditation's been enormous for me to understand that and comprehend that a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And like most people don't even know why they do what they do.
Right. That's so true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I only feel that way because I've discovered a lot of myself internally that's like, damn, like I didn't even know that that was a habit or trait of mine.
Right.
And if you don't look inward, it's hard to really pick up on those things.
Totally.
Most people don't.
Yeah. So it's like, this process of like unraveling, you know, the facade a little bit, or like, okay, like this is the perception. I don't love it, but it, you know, like using that, like, okay, like, you know, how can I maybe make some adjustments here? Like, and peel back some of that like archetypal stuff that I've fed into on my own page, and like kind of undoing that a little bit and like walking away from that, like, you know, like trying to make everything perfect. And so that's not relatable, right? Like it's not really like no one can relate to that. Yeah. So
they can relate to the want of that though.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah.
But that's a completely different, different topic.
Yeah. But I know other influencers in this area have kind of felt that same thing. And like, there was one that I was talking to the other day, and he had made kind of a cryptic post about like receiving some or hearing someone talking badly about him. And so I reached out, and it's like, yeah, like, and that this thing happened and it made me feel sad. I'm like, that sucks. You're like really, really young. Like, you know, so I was like, that's, you know, and yeah, bringing that up of like people do things because of themselves. But even if you really understand that, I can still see how it would be, you know, hurtful, because it is. And I think it's important that we all remember that we're people behind these profiles, right? There's an actual human person, and you don't know everything about them and their life, and keep that in mind.
Yeah. Mind and heart.
Yeah.
And one of the most important pieces of perspective in this concept that goes with me everywhere is this is the perfect moment for compassion.
Yes.
Like compassion diffuses and dissolves so much frustration,
Absolutely.
so much misjudgment, everything. Because in the end, you don't know this other person.
Exactly.
And you don't know who they are, where they're coming from, what they've been through. And when people lash out in any way, that's some deeper stuff happening there.
Totally.
And that doesn't mean that you aren't being an asshole, or that you shouldn't maybe do some things different.
Or that it's not hurtful.
Or that it's not hurtful. Or that there might not, or maybe there is some truth in what's being said. And that's where like that actual reflection of it as well, and not being so caught up in the ego of, I'm just going to do it regardless of how it influences other people. There's such a fine, like that's what being a human is.
Yeah.
It's just on a different scale now that we have social media.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally. How do you approach vulnerability in the online space? Because I hear that talked about a lot. I talk about it a lot. Like, how do you approach that?
I do my best to do what feels proper. And by feeling what feels proper, that's through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of meditation.
Yeah.
And feeling what being the genuine being inside of me feels like.
Yeah.
And building a relationship with that part of who we are. And then sharing that with the world and saying things and being coming from that place, not from a place of wanting to get something from a person,
right?
Not from the place of wanting to be appeared as something.
Right.
That's a complete disassociation from that deeper knowing, that deeper soul being inside of us.
Yeah.
And from there, this is where like the practice of being a human, or the Tao, the way of nature, and development blends into other areas of our life.
Yeah.
Like who we are, our attributes, how we handle stress. Do we take cold baths? How do we handle that? Do we spar and get humbled for an hour straight? And how do you handle that frustration? Do you let it hijack your system and you lose yourself in that? Or can you learn through it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And with that, I mean, building a relationship with that part of who I am or who we are as people and being okay sharing that, because comprehending myself more, when we comprehend who we are more, we comprehend other people. When we comprehend other people, we understand who we are more. We aren't that different. We're super similar.
Yeah.
And really resonating with that concept, sharing certain things, you recognize like, damn, other people feel this way too.
Totally.
And that just builds that snowball effect of people who are really interested in the deeper workings of life.
Yeah.
And a lot of this comes down to like being the beacon for the movement or message that you wish to be in.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of our platform is like not many platforms form this way.
Yeah.
And there's for sure not one here in Boise. So you got to be that. You got to become that.
Yeah.
You got to embody those abilities and be that person.
Yeah.
And learn what that person even is, right? Because that person's
Totally.
inside of you.
Yeah. Yeah. So like when I'm working through this with clients a little bit, like it's kind of my version of that is, so what you're doing is you're processing on your own, you're processing internally, you're not processing online, right? Like you're taking that time to go inward and be reflective first. So not opening with that. And then another sort of tidbit that when I'm consulting on this is like, share the message, not the mess a little bit. Like, why are you sharing? Like, leave people with your message, not the mess. Like, I don't know, just to help give people a little bit of context and framework, because a lot of people have no idea how to be vulnerable online, but in a way that's, well done, if that makes sense. Because the thing that I hear a lot in my consulting is I don't want to air my dirty laundry. And that's not what it's about. You know that, I know that. So just giving people that are maybe like newer to sharing in that way, like, process it yourself first before you share online.
Yeah, there's not much harm that can come from truly coming from your heart.
Right.
And like that goes into how you verbalize that and vocalize that.
Totally.
And articulate what's going on. And if you can come from a place where the words you choose resonate with the part that you're trying to share, like that's the way to share a message.
Right.
Because you're transcribing an internal world to the external world around you. How efficiently do we do that?
Yeah.
And if you do that, I don't know. The rest, in my opinion, it's just like, what are you going to do? That's the best you can do.
Yeah.
You can't determine how it lands on people.
No.
But you can determine your approach and the way you do it.
Yeah, definitely. Good way to go about it.
For sure. It's pretty healthy, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's seemingly way healthier than worrying about how a select portion of the planet is going to respond to something.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple hundred people, maybe a couple thousand out of 8 billion. Like only the little bit of people
Right.
that have access to what you're doing. Like it's
Right.
so irrelevant.
Yeah. And it takes practice too. I think.
For sure.
Yeah. Just slowly but surely, like putting yourself out there. And I think too, once you get started, like, you do open yourself up for some negativity, but it's like so minuscule comparatively to like all the good things. Like, yeah.
And the people you meet because
Right.
of it. That's what you see years down the line of doing it.
Yeah.
Is the people that notice what you're doing and are actually on the same mission. Like that, when you connect with people like that, it's like, oh, okay, I'm still going to continue to do this. And at that point, it's too late anyways, because you've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. Totally.
Darn, I was going to say something.
Wait, no, what was your say? You had a segue thought I wanted you to.
I think, that's something different, but yes.
Something different.
It's combined. So the past several months, we've been sharing our podcast with some pretty large amount of people and communities and people who are like in line with all of this. And what do you expect when you share stuff to a large amount of people? You're gonna probably receive some comments from people that like the page but don't truly believe in what's going on. And
Sure.
we receive some crazy messages, and I'm not gonna repeat them
Right.
on here.
Yeah.
But like absolutely absurd things.
Wow.
And like honestly insane things.
Yeah.
And how do you respond to that?
Do you respond to that?
I mean, I did.
You did.
I mean, from a place of heart.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's just from a place of like cool, like you feel this way, but it doesn't determine anything, bro.
Yeah.
But internally, how do you respond to that? Do
Yeah.
you let that have you not post for 3 weeks?
Right.
Do you let that pull you back from your mission, or do you allow that to help you understand who you are?
Yeah.
And develop a deeper relationship with why you're doing what you're doing?
Yeah, totally. And the amount of positive feedback that I'm sure you get is, significantly the vast majority of stuff. Like so I've received some backlash as well. And I just was like, processing that. But I did a post a while back about struggling in school. I had terrible ADHD. I still do. It's like still a struggle. But so I did really poorly in school, which is pretty common tale, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs. Like we don't really fit into this mold. And at that time, and I was in rural Idaho, it's not like there were a plethora of resources for a kid with a learning disability, right? They're like, give her a D. D's get degrees, right? We'll move her along. But anyway, so I wrote this post about it, and I was terrified to write it and post it. I am every time. Anything I put, anything out there that's on that role, like I have to push myself. It doesn't always feel really good. But that particular post, I still get comments on that and direct messages from parents saying, my kid is having this same struggle and I'm going to share your post with my daughter, or I felt like that too. And if I would not have shown up in that space in that way, I would never have gotten any of that response. If that makes it was so, and I didn't know. I mean, we never know when we put out a piece of content whether or not it's going to land. Maybe we have our suspicions sometimes, and then maybe we're wrong. Sometimes I'll post things, I'm like, oh, this is fire. Everyone's going to love this. And it's performs really poorly. And I'm like, what? How did that happen? But anyway, so that post and that was really centering and motivating. Okay, I want to keep, if we share our stories that way, it gives other people both an example of and permission to share their own stories. And I'm a firm believer in seeing is believing. If we have examples of stuff, that's why representation is important. If we see it happening, it does something in our mind of it connects the dots of I can do that too.
You know what's an amazing example of that? So this is such a profound example of exactly what you just said. When the 4-minute mile was broke, within the next week, 16 people broke it. Think about that. It's never been done. Someone did it. It was on national television, and it's oh, it's possible. We can do that. Boom.
Yeah.
A dozen people broke it.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
When we see something in our nervous system registers it, and it's that's possible.
Right.
What?
Oh.
Oh, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. Right.
That's amazing.
That makes sense.
It's super cool.
Yeah.
Through this whole process of you being a human, your development,
Yes.
all of your lifelong motion patterns and trials and errors and lessons and recognitions and gems of wisdom gained, what have been some of the biggest things you've learned? Whether it's pre-realtor, that compounding with previous Toby to current Toby, and dealing with people in your audience and career path.
Yeah.
What are some lessons you've learned in life?
I think dreaming so much bigger. I know we hear that a lot in entrepreneur and sales training, dream bigger. But now that I've had some of the successes that I've had, I am trying to embrace that even now, more. Whatever your wildest, craziest dream is, write that down and then multiply it by 2. thinking so much bigger than you even can conceptualize. Like if you would have told me, so before I was in real estate, I was a recreation therapist in Oregon. That was what I did. I have a degree in psychology, and I actually did inpatient mental health rec therapy. I know, right? That was a riot.
I did not know that.
Yeah. It's a total departure, right, from what I do now. But I mean, being in Idaho is,
cool.
as much as I love Idaho, like our mental health system is not engineered nearly as well as the state of Oregon. Idaho's a little more growth to do in that department. So anyway, when I came from Oregon, I had the same job in Oregon, and then I had it in Idaho, and it was just completely different. I took a huge pay cut, and I had no more creativity in my lessons, and I was just like, I'm out. I want to work for myself. So, but yeah, so I started in real estate, and at that time I was like, be self-employed, just be a realtor. And where I am now, like I could never have even imagined like the doors that would be open for me that I have now. So now I'm like, what do I want to do next? Like, yeah, it's hard to conceptualize past what you know, if that makes sense. Like I have actually talked to Natalie about that. I had coffee with her the other day, and like she and I were just talking about that. Like I was telling her, I'm like, I feel kind of stuck. Like I don't, and she was like, yeah, because you've probably already exceeded like what you even, like, did you even fathom that, you know, you would be asked to speak at events? No. My graduating class was like 52 students in rural Idaho. Like, no, I could never have imagined. But now here I am. So I'm trying to like write that next page. But
yeah, that's an amazing response because it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
We are far more capable than we recognize.
Yeah.
And divine presence, alignment, the organization of fluid existence has a way of producing and opening and providing and blossoming amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And each opportunity builds onto the other opportunity. And it truly just like, it's like a self-circulating system of creation.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is. Yeah. And just to keep pushing past those like comfort levels, like, yeah, it can open up, you know, doors maybe you don't want, but the other doors like are so beyond worth it. And I'm just so glad that I kept just trying and creating and putting things out there and just consistently showing up in that way. And I wasn't like, at the time, I wasn't thinking about, you know, I want to do this or that or speak or teach people how to do this. Like I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was just kept doing and things unfold, you know, as they do. But I'm glad I didn't let that fear of like being seen stop me from continuing to put out my ideas.
How many people allow that to happen?
I know. And it's not easy. Like
it's not.
It's not.
It's felt by everybody, but it's how we handle those moments.
Yeah.
It's how we deal with that resistance. It's how we get through those being stuck in those mental blocks. That's really what it is. It's a mental block. It may be an energetic block, but it's also like a mental construct that is preventing motion.
Yeah.
It's so interesting when like we allow those things to just like flow by.
Yeah.
And that thought we can release and let go and breathe into it and truly like alchemize that sensation into potential and opportunity and ability. And that goes with you everywhere you freaking go.
Yeah. Definitely does.
I like that response.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Me too. Right? I'm also glad that I like it. There's an amazing J. Cole lyric. I don't know what it is. I can't remember it, but it's something along the lines of like, it's something about dreaming big. Like, I'm totally talking into nothing right now, but it's very, very good. And it resonates with exactly what you're saying. Like there's truly always more. And we have that ability to,
or just to ask for more. And that's like a worthiness thing too, a little bit. If you like want to go down that road, like it's a worthiness, like, oh, I couldn't do that, or I can't do that, or I couldn't ask for that. That's crazy. Or I couldn't achieve that. And it's like, why not? Why not receive those things? You're worth having whatever it is that you want. Like I have to battle that in my own self. Like like, oh, I want to do this thing. It seems so bold, or, you know, whatever it is. I'm like, well, why not? Why not? Why not you? Why don't you deserve to have your own business or have a platform or have an audience or have the opportunity to speak on? It's like, why not? Why not you? You've worked hard. Like you're doing the work, but it's something that I still have to talk myself through at times.
Yeah, that was a recent recognition through a meditation the other night. It was just around worthiness and being worthy of love and feeling like what being worthy even feels like, and not to or from other people, but like for yourself.
Yeah.
Like tell yourself like you are worthy. Feel your worth.
Yeah.
And we are all divine beings.
Are you familiar with imposter syndrome?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the realest. I don't know how much like that resonates with you. And so many women
degrees.
in particular that I have worked with in the past, like that just, and not just women, like everybody, but it just seems to come up again and again. Like, yeah, feeling like, oh, who am I to say this? Or it's like,
it's common across humanity.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan has talked about that actually.
Yeah.
He's like, how do I have this platform? Like, I'm just a dude.
Right.
And that's a different thing to wrap your mind around.
Yeah.
For sure. And
because he's just doing it.
He's just doing it.
He put himself out there and just did it.
Yeah, it's amazing how people can grow something to that capacity.
Yeah. Wild.
He gets like 190 million downloads a month. That's insane.
Yeah. Wild.
But
he's such a sweetie. He's such a sweetheart. He just loves his kids and his cats and his dog. It's so cute. I like his pictures of his kitties.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for sharing your insight. Thank you for sharing your perspective. Yeah, thank you for the journey you've been on.
Yeah.
Everything. Because you're on it and we're both on it. And
I know we're
process.
Side by side in it.
Yeah.
I think we're peers.
We are peers.
Right? That's how I feel. Because I'm like, oh, he's been right there with me in a weird way the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel that way about like a few people, especially locally, where we're all kind of got into it at the same time. And here we all are, like, continuing to grow. It's like we're like classmates. It makes me happy to see, like, you and others, like, oh, that's so cool. They're doing this thing now. And like, he's been working on this for so long. And it's fun.
For sure.
It's fun to see. And it makes the entrepreneur journey a little bit less lonely, I think.
It does.
Yeah. Which 100% I appreciate.
It does. Yeah. I appreciate that too. So thank you for your growth.
Yeah.
Do you have any remaining words, feelings, anything?
I don't think so. I'm excited to see where you go next, and me as well. And maybe we can do this again in another 5 years.
That's amazing. And
You're right.
We will, for sure.
And see where we're at.
Toby.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Anytime.